Hello, and welcome to the RefineMS Digital Mobility Sub-Study Training. I'm Dr. John Mitchell, and in this video we're going to be going over how to set up a sensor, attach it to a participant, and what to do when the sensor comes back. Mobility assessments will take place at multiple time points throughout the project. That's one at the initial time point, one after each course of ocrelizumab, and one at the final time point. Patients have a 6-week window in which the mobility assessment can take place, but we'll talk more about why these delays might occur and how to deal with them later in the video. In order to perform a mobility assessment, you need a charged Axivity AX6 sensor, a cable to connect the sensor to the computer, a laptop, which we will have provided each site with, one of each of the adhesive patches to attach the sensor to the subject, and height and weight measuring equipment. While weight and height are already being measured as part of RefineMS, we also need to measure the sensor height, which can be measured from the ground to the position of the sensor on the lower back, which we're aiming to be around the 5th lumbar vertebra, which is about here on the skeleton. We can measure this value using a standard height measuring stick. Once you've measured the participant's height, simply bring the bar down to their lower back where the sensor is positioned or will be positioned and read off the value to obtain the sensor height. I can't stress enough how important it is to have this measurement. Our algorithms won't work without it. Next, let's take a look at the sensors. The Axivity AX6 sensor is a small black puck with a label on just one side, which notably features the device number, a small arrow indicating the upwards direction, and on the bottom facing side, a small charging port. These devices are water resistant up to 1.5 meters and don't need charging for the duration of the data collection. Participants can hopefully stick them on and forget about them for 7 days. First, let's plug an Axivity sensor into the computer and see what happens. As you heard, the device connected and disconnected a couple of times, and then finally opened this page on File Explorer showing a CWA-DATA.CWA file. We can close this for now. It is important to note, however, that the reason this happens is because the computer treats the Axivity device a bit like a removable USB storage device, and just like a USB, we can see the device appear in our This PC section on the left.
Let's open OMGUI, which can be found on the desktop and the taskbar. OMGUI is how we communicate with the sensors. All sensors that are plugged in will appear in a list in the top section, along with some properties of the sensor, such as the session ID, battery percentage, whether any data has been downloaded, and the recording conditions for that sensor. If we click on a sensor with data on it, that data will be plotted in this grey box. We can use that to check if our sensor data looks as we expect it to. Below this, we have the Workspace, which by default is the Documents folder on the computer, though we should have changed this to another folder called NHS_data inside of the Documents folder. Inside the Workspace section, we can see any .CWA files that are inside the Workspace folder. We can click any of these to see the data on them. To select a device to record, simply select the device from the list in the top section. Note that the device number is the same on OMGUI as it is on the label of the sensor, and you can use this to work out which device you're setting to record. You can also click the Identify button, which will make the corresponding sensor flash blue and purple. To set up a 7-day recording for RefineMS, choose a sensor plugged into the computer by simply clicking on it in the top section. Make sure there's no data on it by ensuring that the graph region is empty. If it's not empty, like it is here, ensure that the data has been downloaded before clearing the device, which is outlined in the Processing Return Sensors section later in this video. Please be careful here and always download the data again if you're unsure, as once the sensor is cleared, we can't recover this data. We can clear the data by clicking the Clear button at the top and wiping the device. Once the sensor has been wiped, you see these dark and light grey vertical lines in the graph section, meaning that there's no data on the sensor and we're ready for recording. At this point, we can click the Record button at the top of the screen. This brings up a menu where we can enter our recording settings. We can leave the recording session ID at 0. The frequency should be 100 Hz, the range should be 8, and the gyro should be 2000. For the recording time, select interval. The start date should be tomorrow at midnight. And we can set the duration to 7 days and verify that the end date is 1 week away from our start date. If the patient requires any delays, we can add these in the calendar. Simply select a different start date. You should notice that the delay counter goes up, the duration remains the same, and that the end date has updated. Under the study section, the study code should be the visit month. And under the subject section, the code should be 428, followed by your 3-digit site code. For now, I'm just going to put 001. And then your 3-digit subject ID, which again, for this tutorial, I'll put 001. These values will be used to automatically generate a file name once we download the data at the end of the recording period to keep things nice and organized. Finally, take note of this bottom left section. There's nothing here at the moment, but this is where any warnings will display, such as if the timing interval that's been entered is invalid, or to alert you of any other issues, such as the battery having been drained in the previous recording. Finally, ensure that the sensor is not flashing when recording by unchecking this flash during recording box. Once you're done, select OK. And after a short configuration time, you should see the recording interval specified under the recording time that we just entered. That's midnight from today to midnight in a week. If everything looks okay here, that's good, and we can go and open our device in File Explorer to check if we have a CWA-DATA.CWA file on there, and that it's 1 kilobyte in size. Simply unplug the device and it will automatically start recording at the specified time and date, and automatically stop recording at the specified end time and date.
There are 2 adhesives used to attach the sensor. First is the special adhesive patch found in the silver package. Peel off the smaller side first and stick the sensor to the patch such that the label is readable. The arrow must be pointing up towards the remaining tab. We can now access the middle of the lower back, aiming as close to the 5th lumbar vertebra as we can. Clean the area with an alcohol wipe. Peel off the larger tab of the sensor adhesive and stick the sensor to the skin such that the label is readable and the arrow is facing upwards. These adhesives are hypoallergenic, but can be initially uncomfortable, so it can help to ask the patient to move a little and ensure that the device is stuck on. Next, cut a 10 cm strip of the adhesive roll, which you can measure using the 1 cm squares on the back. Remove the plastic and place it directly on the center of the sensor. Then, wrap the adhesive around the sensor and finally press it against the skin, ensuring that there are no air bubbles. Again, it may be a good idea to ask the participant to move around a little and then press it back down to ensure it's comfy. Some people may have hair in this area, and it can be a good idea to inform them that shaving may make the sensor more comfortable ahead of their appointment. It's important to inform the participant about the function of the device, that it doesn't use GPS or track location, and that it won't be connecting to any Wi-Fi or Bluetooth networks. If the participant wants to go swimming, as we've previously mentioned, they should take the device off for the period of the activity, and then just simply replace it on after the activity is finished. The device doesn't need to be charged or maintained in any way, and if the participant, for any other reason, wants to take the device off for an extended period of time, they may do so, but they should log this time. With the device on the participant and recording, they're good to go, and the sensor will automatically stop recording when the specified end time is reached. Next, we need to ensure that we send the participant home with the necessary study materials. Each participant needs a copy of the sub-study participant instructions and measurement log with the participant ID, 3-letter code, date of birth and visit date filled out. You should also fill out the date and time of the sensor attachment on page 1 and ensure that the name and telephone number of your site contact is also filled out so that participants can reach out if they need to. Participants will also need a padded envelope to return the sensors in and a silver prepaid envelope. Ensure that the prepaid envelope has both the patient address and the returned address on, which you may want to fill out at the appointment. And please tell the participant to return this to a proper post office and to deny any request to get them to pay for the package. If they have any trouble, they should reach out using the contact information on the provided instruction and measurement log. Participants also need some spare adhesives and dressings, and these should be given out based on the participant's needs. Participants should be asked to return any unused adhesives and dressings, so it's always best to play it safe and give them extras while balancing the risk of running out if they don't return them. On the morning after the final day of measurement, the participant can remove the device. The participant should then return the prepaid envelope containing the padded envelope with the sensor inside and any unused dressings or adhesives and the completed measurement log. When we first get the sensor back, we need to remove any latent adhesive stuck to the sensor. It's quite common for the small adhesive patch from the silver-backed adhesives to be stuck to the sensor, and some participants may scrunch the whole thing into a ball of dressing and adhesives with the sensor in the middle. Simply remove as much as you can using scissors if needed, and then use an alcohol wipe to remove any stickiness from the adhesive. You may also wish to use a generic wipe to clean the device. And it's important to note that due to their water resistance, we don't need to be too worried about going over the charging port, but please don't submerge the device in water during cleaning. Once the device is clean and dry, we can plug it into our laptop and open OMGUI.
Just like in the sensor setup section, our device will show up in the top section of OMGUI, but this time it will say interval followed by the start and end date and times of recording, and then with data in brackets at the end. This time when we click on the device in the list, we'll have the options to download and clear the device. While the device is selected in the list, we can also see the graph of the data on the device. In this example I recorded just 1 hour, but if we look at a previous example, you can see there's these shaded regions. Each of these refers to a single day, and each of the vertical dark and light grey bars refers to an hour. We can also do a sanity check here. You can see that overnight the accelerometer data is fairly flat, potentially with a few little bits where the participants moved in their sleep. If you notice huge periods where the data is flat like this, we can probably assume that the participant took the device off, and we should cross-reference this with the log or call the participant and make sure that they didn't take the device off early without logging that they did so. To download the data, click the download button at the top of the screen, and you should see the data file appear in the workspace at the bottom with the appropriate file name going subject code, month or study code, device ID, and then the date and time that the recording was started. If you wish to rename the file manually, you can click this button to open the working folder and find the file in here to rename it. To ensure that we're happy that the data is successfully downloaded, we can click the new CWA file in the workspace and make sure that the graph appears and that it looks similar to how it did when we clicked it on the sensor, which still has the data on, so we can cross-reference if we want to at this point. Once you're happy that the data is downloaded and backed up, you can clear the device by clicking the clear button and wiping the device. We can then wait for the battery to reach 100% again, and then this device is ready to be set up and used with a new participant. If you've plugged a sensor in to start a recording and found that there's data on the sensor, we need to make sure that the data is backed up. The easiest way to do this is to simply click the download button again, and if the data already exists in our folder, we'll be presented with this pop-up. We can simply overwrite the file if we want to, or we can cancel knowing that the file is already there. And then we can proceed to clear the device knowing that the data is downloaded. If the file you've downloaded doesn't follow the correct naming convention, it probably looks something like this, with the device ID followed by an underscore and a bunch of zeros. We can rename this manually, as we went over earlier, by opening the working folder and renaming this file. But if we want to fix this in the future, we should go over to Tools, Options, and we want to change this file name field here. Currently you can see it's taking the device ID and the session ID and putting them after each other with an underscore in the middle. We need to change this so that instead of device ID, it goes subject code, then an underscore, then study code, then an underscore, and then in our curly brackets again, device ID with a capital I, another underscore, and then in curly brackets again, start time. This string can be found in the study procedure manual, so don't feel like you have to type it out, you can just find it in there. We can then click OK, and now any future files we download will automatically name themselves correctly. The CWA-DATA.CWA file is the configuration file and the data file for a sensor. This means that if the file is missing, as it is here, we can't be sure if the device will behave properly when we unplug it. In order to fix this, simply start a recording, then immediately stop the recording, unplug the device, plug the device back in again, and now when we look on the device we should see we have a CWA-DATA.CWA file. We can now set up a recording as usual using the interval recording time. If at any point you notice that the Workspace folder does not contain the NHS_data folder as the top level folder, or any files that you were expecting to be in the Workspace are missing, you can change the Workspace folder by clicking the three dots on the right here. We then need to go to our Documents folder and to our NHS_data folder, click OK, and now our Workspace should be in the correct location and you should see all of the files that you've recorded into that folder appear in the Workspace at the bottom.